Welcome to Value Vest Daily. What if I told you that the future of artificial intelligence isn't really about writing smarter code, but about finding a smarter place to run it? We're about to dive into an idea that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, but believe me, it's becoming a very real, very investable reality. We're talking about moving AI off planet and into orbit.
And this really gets to the heart of the matter. We all want more AI, better AI, faster AI. Our demand for it is just exploding. But the thing is, the power grids, the water, and the actual physical land we need to support it, well, those things are finite. We are absolutely hitting a wall.
So first, let's really dig into these limits. The incredible growth we're seeing is starting to bump up against some very real physical problems right here on the ground. Earth itself is becoming the bottleneck. Now check this out, because this is pretty wild. You would probably assume that all the electricity pouring into a data center is going towards, computing, the thinking part. But the reality is just staggering. Almost 40% of that massive energy bill is for one thing, and one thing only: cooling. We are burning billions of dollars just to stop these machines from literally melting down. That is a crazy inefficiency.
So you've got this trifecta of problems. There's what you could call the AI energy wall, where these huge tech companies are now literally competing with cities for electricity. Then you have that cooling bottleneck we just talked about, a huge ongoing cost. And finally, these things need massive amounts of land and fresh water, which puts them in direct competition with things like farming and, local communities. So, if Earth itself is the bottleneck, if we're running out of power and water and space, it kind of forces you to ask a really radical question. Where else can we possibly go? And the answer, it turns out, isn't on another continent. It's in a completely different environment. Let's talk about the orbital compute solution, and let's think about it from the ground up using first principles of physics. This quote from investor Gavin Baker just nails it. It really crystallizes the whole idea. When you stop thinking with that sort of earthbound mindset, the solution becomes almost obvious. I mean, why are we fighting against gravity and an atmosphere just to cool these gigantic heat-producing machines? It just makes so much more sense to put them where cooling is free and effortless. So what exactly makes space so perfect for this? Well, it really boils down to three huge game-changing advantages. First, you've got basically infinite power. You put a satellite in the right orbit, it gets sunlight 24/7. No need for massive, heavy batteries. Second, space is the ultimate heat sink. It's a near-perfect vacuum that's incredibly cold. You don't pay for cooling. Heat just radiates away for free. And third, and this one might surprise you, you get faster data. See, lasers traveling in a vacuum move at the true speed of light, but light traveling through fiber optic cables on Earth actually gets slowed down by about 30%. It's just a perfect combination. Okay, this all sounds fantastic in theory, right? But for decades, that's all it was, a theory. It was just way too expensive. So what changed? Why is this massive economic shift happening right now? The entire economic equation got turned completely upside down by one single factor: the collapse in the cost of getting to space. Thanks mostly to SpaceX and their reusable rockets, the price to send 1 kilogram into orbit has just plummeted. And with their new Starship, we're talking about a price drop of over 98%. That one change is the catalyst. It turns this whole idea from a sci-fi if into an economic when. All right, so if this huge shift is on the horizon, how do you even think about it as an investor? Well, the classic move during a gold rush is not to bet on a miner, but to sell the picks and shovels. The exact same logic applies here. The real opportunity might not be the very first company running a data center in space, but in the technologies that make the whole ecosystem possible. And of course, a quick but very important disclaimer. Everything we're about to discuss is for informational purposes only. It is not financial advice. Please always do your own research. First up, you need the freight trains to space. I mean, you can't build a new economy in orbit without a cheap, reliable way to haul heavy stuff up there. This is the absolute bedrock for everything else. In this category, the undisputed leader is, of course, the private company SpaceX. Their Starship rocket is really the key that unlocks this entire thesis. Now, for a public option, you've got Rocket Lab, ticker RKLB. They are a super reliable launch company, and they're developing their own heavier rocket called Neutron, which positions them to be a really key player down the road. Okay, next up, we have the builders. Once you're actually in orbit, you need companies that can build the specialized gear. The satellite frames, the massive radiators for cooling, the huge solar arrays, all of it has to be designed to survive in the harsh environment of space. Here you've got a company like Redwire, ticker RDW. They specialize in exactly this kind of stuff, deployable things like big solar panels and radiators. And then there's Viasat, VSAT. They have decades of experience building the big, high-power satellite platforms that'll probably serve as the foundation for these orbital data centers. So you've got these data centers in orbit. How do they talk to each other? How do they talk back down to Earth? Your standard radio waves just can't handle the sheer amount of data. The answer is lasers. We're talking about a high-bandwidth network that basically acts as the whole system's nervous system. A really interesting pure play here is Mynaric, ticker MYNA. They build the actual laser communication terminals. And then, supporting them, you have foundational companies like Luminum, ticker LITE. They make the critical laser parts that go inside those terminals. As this network grows, demand for their core technology is just going to go up and up. And finally, we have to ask, who are the ultimate customers for all of this incredible infrastructure? Well, you just have to look at who has the biggest problem that needs solving. And of course, it's the hyperscalers, Google, Microsoft, Amazon. They're the ones already spending billions and billions on power and cooling here on Earth. They have the most to gain from this shift. It would give them a massive cost advantage. They are absolutely going to be the primary customers driving this new frontier. So let's just zoom out for a second and think about the big picture here. What does all this really mean? We're not just talking about a new kind of satellite. We are literally watching the migration of the core infrastructure of our entire digital civilization from the ground up into orbit. The implications are just profound. And that leaves us with one final fascinating thought to chew on. For all of human history, value has been tied to physical land on Earth. But what happens if the brains of our global economy, all the data, the computing power, the AI, what happens when that moves into orbit? How does our whole definition of value change? Think about it. What becomes the most valuable real estate in the solar system? It's a massive paradigm shift, and I think it's coming a lot faster than most people realize. Please subscribe, like, and share ValueVest Daily for daily learning opportunities before you put your money to work. And one more thing, please put in a comment if you want us to deep dive into any specific high-risk/reward opportunities.